Like she said, my name is Paul McDonald. I work for the Natural Resources Conservation Service out of Columbia, and the project I really work on is something we call EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentives Program. But we've got two main programs that we utilize in Missouri, and one is what we call EQIP. The other is called CSP, Conservation Stewardship Program, and those are the programs that we really utilize here in the state, among others. But the EQIP program is the one that we've utilized for our virtual fence initiative that we started within the last year. And so EQIP, so last summer we started talking about with some partners about virtual fence and how it could be utilized within the system that NRCS provides within our grazing management. And we tried to figure out a way to put that into the practices. And we've worked with our national headquarters to integrate that into our cost schedule. And so for 2026, this is our first year that we're working with the virtual fence project. And so we announced to sign up in the fall. We had a deadline of January 15th of this year, and we took our first applications for virtual fence. And so the way our process works, it's on an annual cycle. And so we receive funding from Congress federally, and we allocate those resources towards different projects. And so this year, we did our funding in the spring, and some of those projects are coming online now with the virtual fence and actually getting implemented out there on farms. And so I'll give you a little background about how it works. And so there's two main scenarios that we utilize for virtual fence. And as you can see, the top says fence. And that's basically a one-time cost that we're going to pay towards some of those physical items that you have to purchase for the virtual fence. And so like the collars, base stations, transmitters, depending on which company you're going to go through, some of those are a little bit different. But so the physical items that go with the project, that will pay a one-time cost for that. And then that also has what we call an implementation cost, which is based on the number of head that you're going to be putting those collars on. And so the second piece of that is the grazing management. And so we've got essentially over a period of 5 years, we'll pay a grazing management incentive to manage those fields in a more resource-friendly way. And so those payments basically come in years 2 through 6. I made a mistake there. It says 2 through 5, but those come in years 2 through 6. And so that's basically for the training, the operation, the maintenance, and the maintenance that goes along with keeping those collars online. So depending on how early in the year you put those on, there's a potential for paying that in year 1. So I'll get into an example here. And so this example, we've got about 50 head of cattle on 250 acres, and we only need one base station. And so they're currently meeting our standard, this grazing management standard, and they're utilizing 3 to 5 day moves. And so what we're planning on is a 6-year contract. And like I said, this will happen over the 6 years, with the first year being the fence. And you can see on top there, this is what a typical scenario would look like for payments in a 6-year contract. So year 1, we would have what we call the base scenario. And that's that $8,400 that we pay basically a flat rate for our physical things that we're purchasing, like the collars, base stations, and that sort of thing. And so then there is a variable on there with the implementation that pays $41 an acre. So that's based on the amount of collars you're going to provide and put on your animals. And so that would equal, in this scenario with 50 animals, about $2,000. And then we have the adaptive management, which was the 528 grazing management. And that's paid years 2 through 6 at about $65 an acre times or $65 an animal times your 50 animals, and about $16,000 is what you receive from that. And so that happens over a 5-year period. And so the total cost for this scenario with 50 animals would be about $27,000 will be pay out for something along those lines. And so obviously this is scalable. If you have more animals, it would be an increased cost. If you have less animals that we're gonna put those collars on, it'd be a less of a cost. So, but that base is the same no matter if you have 20 animals or if you have 100 animals, that $8,400. And so that stays the same because a lot of that physical cost is the same with all of the projects. All right, some requirements. They need to be on the farm. The cattle need to be on the farm at least 210 days or at least the duration that you have them on the farm. And so if you move cattle from farm to farm, they would need to be utilized on that farm for that amount of time. And so we take records in several different ways. Could be writing it on a calendar, could be electronic records, could be some forms that we could give you on what we call an IR sheet, which is an implementation requirement. So this 528 IR, you could record it on that. So there's several different ways that you could communicate that information to us. And so some of the things that we would need: number of head, the weight of your animals, the height in and out of the grass when you put your cattle in that field and out of that field, and then the dates that you were in those fields and then moved along. So, and the other thing is we need to show an increase in management. So like if you're into weekly moves, we need to show an increase in that resource benefit out there on the farm. And so that's why we receive these funds to improve the resource base. And so the way that we're showing that increase in resource conservation essentially is by increasing the moves on those farms to better utilize the plants, increase utilization, a lot of other environmental impacts based on that increased moving. And so with that, I'll show you my non-discrimination statement, and I'll take any questions.
Yeah, can you have more than one contract? So say I want to try these collars and I want to do 30 head, but I'm not sure if I want to jump in full bore. But next year I'm like, yeah, that's a great deal. I want to do it again. So can I have more than one contract going each year? Or?
Yeah, it would be based on, well, that's the beauty of EQIP. It's based on what you want to do. It's all voluntary. I should say it's a competitive program, so not everybody gets funded, but it is a voluntary program where if you only want to work on, let's say, one farm or one set of animals, something like that, we can definitely do that.
And then you can follow it up with another contract?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
When you say animal, is that cattle only or small ruminants also?
Yeah, we can do sheep and goats as well. Yep.
Back on one of the sheets,
Yep.
you said there was two different parts, a part where you help with the cost of the material, or back one more, I think. One more. There you go. So are those two plans, if you do one, do you have to do both the fencing scenario and the grazing management, or can you do one or the other?
Most of the time we pair them together, and in this scenario we would pair them together to try to basically pay you more of the cost of what it would take to implement the practice. And so those two are combined to try to pay for a large portion of the share of what it would cost you to implement it, if that makes sense.
Well, so I have done an EQIP program a few years back where I've already put in waters and fencing, for example, so some of that. So that's not a problem, the fact that I would still like to apply for this piece, but not the fencing, watering, all that kind of stuff?
Right, like with this initiative that we did in the last year, all we did was essentially, the initiative was just for virtual fence. It wasn't for the additional things that we normally do with the grazing system, like water systems, Could be wells, ponds, whatever we're using for those initial water sources, and some other maybe permanent fences to go along with your system. So this initiative was just for the virtual fence piece of that, but we also had what you're talking about available for a traditional grazing system with physical fences and water systems and that sort of thing. So
How is the ranking for approval determined?
it's not an easy process to explain, I'll say that. We've got basically some background information in our system that looks at basically the resource improvement on your farm with the practices that you're implementing. So depending on the practice, each practice has a different weight on how much environmental impact it makes. And so the practices with a higher environmental benefit usually receive a higher ranking score, and then that ties back into like your soil types out on your farm, the level of conservation that you're already implementing. So our goal is obviously to, with the dollars, limited dollars that we do have, to utilize them in a way that we get the best bang for our buck, so the best bang for our taxpayer buck. And so if there is let's say there is like a 10-unit increase on one farm in our environmental benefit, and then there's a 20-unit increase on another farm, we'll fund the 20-unit increase before we fund the 10-unit increase. And that's based on a lot of calculations that go in the background. Like I said, that's based on soils, your level of existing management, and that sort of thing. And so if you got a few more questions, I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards. Yeah.
On the next slide, you've got a 528 reporting requirement, I think. Yeah, right there. So that format, could you go more into detail? Do we have to log in your website and fill out, or is it on an app? We can do it on the fly on our phone. What's
Yeah,
it look?
you'd be working with our field offices on getting that information to them. And so most likely you'd be meeting them in person. You could email it to them. We've got a system where you could upload it to an online portal for us to pick it up. So there's several different options on how that could be communicated to us. Yep.
Oh, are we done?
Yeah, so the question is, can you do it on one farm and not another if you've got multiple amounts of animals on each farm? Is that okay? Yeah, so you could do it on just one farm over another farm. With EQIP, you can really focus on the acres that you really want to focus on, and you don't have to focus on the rest of them. With our stewardship program, it's more of a whole farm project where you have to put the whole farm in. And so with EQIP, you can just pick out, I want to do, let's say, these acres and not do the acres that are on the other side of the county or next door or whatever it is.